Welcome to the Family Nonsense Podcast, providing personal finance for families. Join Rich and James, who debate, relate, and make sense of the financial nonsense. All right, Rich, let's dive into today's topic. Should families lease or buy a car?
Yeah, so this is a good one and a timely one because it's still pretty crazy out there as far as the car market goes. So we were talking before. I mean, I just went through this in December where we decided to upgrade our car. So we were driving, a 2014 Honda Pilot. I think it was a 2013 actually Honda Pilot. And the prices of used cars were just so insane that I was just messing around. I looked on Carvana, and the amount that they were going to give me, it was like $17,000 for the car, which, and when I brought it to a dealership, they were like around 12. So I couldn't believe how much more Carvana was. So I was like, do I take advantage of this and pull the trigger? So I started going out and looking at prices, and the cost, just finding a new car was very, very difficult, right? Especially if you want something that's different than what's sitting on their lot. If you wanted something, a custom color or anything like that, I mean, it is impossible to get a car. Yeah. So just finding a car is very difficult. But then as far as actually buying the car, there was no negotiating. It was like you were lucky to get a car at MSRP. There was no taking any money off of that, no promotions, anything like that. So I think it's still kind of like that out there right now. It's just very difficult to, go ahead and find the car. And the payments, I was reading somewhere that the average national payment for families with a car is like a little bit under $600. I think it was like $590, somewhere around there, which if we go back to when I first started having kids and everything, I mean, I remember my first car. So I've done everything. I've leased cars, I've owned cars, I've made mistakes with it, but I think that the first car that I bought was actually a Honda Elantra when I first graduated college. And it was like $13,000, and I financed it over 5 years. And my car payment, it was like $100. It was, it might have even been a little bit below that. And I drove that car for years and I didn't have a car payment. So I felt very good about that. And then once I got married, started having kids, we went down different paths of different cars to have. So it's a big decision for families because that monthly payment, it could keep you very poor, right? If you're very into cars and you want to have a nice, shiny new car every 3 months, that is a very good way to stay poor. So we'll dive into the numbers a little bit more, when it comes to buying versus leasing, but it is a stress point around families. And especially if you feel like you need to keep up with the Joneses and always have that nice new car. And, when you have a family, it's like there's so many ways to justify that you need, an SUV, a very, big car, third row seating. I mean, I fall into this camp as well. And the prices of those cars, it's like you can't find anything under 50 grand these days if you want to buy something new. And the lease payments, they're very high. So it is a stress point right now. And even with used cars, with the prices, they're still going crazy. It's just like, the best thing to do. I mean, I'm saying this with everything these days, but the best thing to do is to do nothing, right? If you don't have to get a new car, then keep driving the one you got for as long as you can, because it's going to be painful when you go to pull the trigger on getting a new one.
Yeah, this market today is absolutely crazy, not only with houses, with cars, with everything. So, buying or leasing a car, it's crazy mode. So you have to be careful that you don't become car stupid. And by what I mean by that is you just don't overpay for, a car. You don't go above your means. I was car stupid before. I would be the person that would work part-time when I was a kid in high school. I would cut class, go work a part-time job so I could have the new car. I was car stupid. I should have took that money and I should have invested it, and I should have drove a beater. But I didn't, and I lost a lot of investment opportunities because of that, because I just valued at that time. I valued what a car looked like. I valued the status symbol that it provided. Once I had kids, I lost the value of that and just really kind of used it as a means to go from point A to point B. And I think if you don't value having a car right now, like if you don't value like the status of it, if you don't care what it looks like, if you just need it to get from point A to point B and just be somewhat safe and somewhat functional, then you should kind of hold off right now. It's pretty crazy. Things that should be going down in value are going up for the past year. So that's kind of that's very reverse on what it used to be, but that's not going to last. So you have to be very careful for what you pay for now is going to drop in value once these cars are starting to be made faster, and the market will start to get flooded. So you have to just be careful on the decisions you make now, and don't be car stupid, because like I said before, I was car stupid, and it really makes your finances dumb. And you have to just be careful of that, because this is one of like the biggest things you're going to buy, and it's one of the things that's going to depreciate the fastest. So just be very mindful of that, because the car you buy today, you're going to be dissatisfied by it in 5 years from now, and you're going to want the next shiny thing. And it's going to have all the bells and whistles, and your car is going to be playing the cassette tape. Well, not really the cassette tape. You know what I mean? That's how fast these cars evolve. I would, before I was playing CDs, and I still have a car that plays CDs. I think the car dealership would laugh at me if I said, you have a car that plays CDs. I'm so out of touch with it. My car's about 7 years old. So just be careful, and just it's crazy times, and just don't fall in line with what's going on and what the crowds are doing. Don't feel the impulse that you have to buy some really nice car right now. You could wait it out. You could drive a beater, give it a silly nickname, and have fun and just enjoy no payments or really low payments. So just be very careful is my big advice right now, because the car market is just stupid.
Yeah. Yep. No, I totally agree. And as with all things, with all financial decisions, it all comes back to your current situation, right? So there are people out there who maybe, you make a ton of money, you're doing very well financially, and cars are something that are very important to you, and you could afford to buy a new car every few years, or you could afford to lease a car, and it's just not going to put a huge dent in your goals and in your pocket. And for those people, I say, great, if you could afford it, and if you're on very good financial footing and everything's going your way, then go ahead and do it. But for the most of us, it's just a bad financial decision to allocate a large portion of your monthly income towards a car payment. Like you said, with a car, as soon as you drive it off the lot, the thing drops 25%, right? So you have depreciation. And in those first 3 years, the car depreciates more during that time than any other time for the life of the car, right? So those first 3 years, you lose the most value in the car. So that's why it's such a great idea to buy a car for a very long period of time, because the cost of ownership from years like 7 to 8 to 9, it's very low. You might have some maintenance in there, but the car is not going down in value anymore. It's already depreciated, the 90% or so that it's going to depreciate, and then it's going to be pretty level. So if you could push it out another year or two, it's not really like you're losing anything when you go ahead to trade that car in or to, resell it. But those first 3 years, they are very painful. So what people do, because they just aren't educated around it, or they just want that new car every 3 years, is they use it for those first 3 years, which are the most expensive years, and they go ahead, they turn it in, they lease a new one. So they're always using it during those most expensive years of the car, and your payment's always going to be the highest, and you keep yourself poor that way. And it's just a very hard way to go through, trying to manage everything else that's pulling at your pockets. If you have a $600 car payment, in most families, you have 2 cars, right? So if you're paying over $1,000 a month in car payments, and you're not saving for retirement, or you have credit card debt, then you have to take a hard look at what you're doing and make some changes, because it's just not a sustainable path. And when I look at the decision of buying versus renting, I always want to look at the total cost of the car. Right. So you have to price it out in terms of the total amount of time you're going to own it and the total cost. So if you lease a car for 3 years, you have to take that monthly payment. You have to multiply it by the 36 months. Right. Any money that you have to take out of pocket, you have to put down on it, the taxes, and you get that total cost of leasing the car for those 3 years. Then you compare that to buying a car that maybe is just coming off lease, right? Maybe you buy a car in its 3rd year or 4th year of life, and you compare that to if you own the car over, let's say, 7 years, right? Or let's say 6 years to even make it easy, right? So you buy a car that's 3 years old, you own it for 6 years, you compare that to leasing 2 cars, 3 years and 3 years, right? So you have 6 years where you're comparing apples to apples. You'll find that the cost of buying that used car is significantly less than the cost of leasing 2 new cars back to back. And, many people have not lived without a car payment, and it is a good feeling not having a car payment. Most people are they accept it like it's just a fact of life, where I'm going to have a car payment every month, and, it's a lease payment, and I'm renting this car, and I'm going to just keep renewing that lease. But if you could not have a car payment, that means that you have money to throw to other goals, to other places. And it's a very nice feeling not having to stroke that check for, for a car every month.
I agree. I've been driving, I'd say about 25 years, and for 20 of those years I've had a car payment, and for 5 of those years, the last 5 years I haven't had a car payment. And it's just way better with peace of mind to not have a car payment. Do I have the best car? No, I don't. I have an average Volkswagen, 7 years old, and guess what? It could fit my twins in the back seat perfectly. It's not a expensive minivan. I don't need it. It's safe. It's good. It gets me from point A to point B. I can go food shopping with it. I can drop my kids off. I can go to work, whatever. It does what it needs to do. But what it really does, it allows me to invest, allows me to pay off other debt, and allows me to increase my budget, allows me to kind of do things that I want to do. Is it going to change my world? No. If I have a payment or not, it's not going to really change much, but it's going to make it a lot better. And it's going to, over my lifespan, that's when it's going to make the impact. Year to year, it doesn't really feel like, $300 to $600. Some people, they might not really notice the difference, but it really does make a difference. And if you do it times two, if your spouse also has a car and you got double payments, double insurance, the gas prices today, you can't even drive it around. You can't go like joyriding. We used to call it joyriding when I was younger. Yeah. I don't think anyone's doing that today, right? Especially with their car payment, their insurance going up, the gas going up, all this crap. So you just have to kind of, realize if it means a lot to you. I would say if having a nice car means a lot to you, you better hustle for it. Try to pay it in cash, work extra, take some gigs. If that's like your thing, I'll support it. Like if that's your passion and your hobby, cool, go for it. For me, I like new cars. I really do. I think all these cars are beautiful. I always I'll look at them as they drive by and stuff like that. But I just don't want it in my life because I just value other things. I appreciate the cars from far away, and I understand people's hobbies, but I just don't value it. I've had my car for 7 years. I don't even think I vacuumed it. There's like a Pop-Tart that's like 5 years old, for my kids in that back seat. I just don't care. It gets me from point A to point B, and that's all I want for it. I'm going to use my car. I'm not going to let my car use me. So that's kind of my take on it. I understand if you're a car person, that's cool, but just try to hustle and just get it paid off, and then you could really enjoy it. And then it's just going to be nice and low cost for you. And so I would just say try to have that type of approach. Don't be stuck in these payments, or just try to make them very low, because you don't want to be controlled by this. And as inflation goes up, and let's say you start having kids, or you're having more kids, or you lose a job, you just don't want to worry about your car. It's just one less thing. It's another squirrel in your yard you got to chase around and worry about. Get rid of it. Kill the squirrel. Don't have a car payment is what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. And I mean, just, to be clear, if we were to list out what is the most expensive to the cheapest way to owning a car, then it's really not a comparison. Leasing a car is the most expensive way. No matter what you like, no matter how we try to break it down, it's just the most expensive because you're always getting a new car, right? Then as we start going down the pecking order, if you could buy a new car and afford the payment, then it's still an expensive way to own a car, right? It might be better because you're building equity. You're going to own that car. It's still going to depreciate a lot in those first 3 years. It's still going to be expensive. Obviously, the longer you could drive the car, the cheaper it becomes over the life of it, right? You might have maintenance issues. You might have to change tires. I just had to change tires on my, I have an Acura TLX that I drive that is now, I believe, 6 years old. I had to change the tires on it recently. So it's an expense that you wouldn't have when you're leasing, but I don't have a car payment on it anymore, right? So which is very nice, right? So it goes from leasing most expensive, then buying new, second most expensive. But the sweet spot, if you still need a decent car and you don't want to buy a 10-year-old car, is to buy one that just comes off lease, right? Something that has 30,000 miles on it. It's still very safe and very nice. And, you get certified pre-owned. It's already depreciated the most. You buy it at that point. If you could drive that car for 7 years, from year 4 to year 10, basically, then the maintenance, it might come into play, but it shouldn't be terrible. And the car is still going to be nice. And if you could put, $120,000 miles on the thing and drive it over the next 6 or 7 years, that's the cheapest way to own a car. I mean, if you're one of those people who just really doesn't care, and you could, maybe flip cars, buy cars that are, 10 years old, buy them on Craigslist and get very good deals, and you're into that kind of stuff, then I know people that don't pay anything for cars. They make money on cars, right? Because they're buying used cars and then they're driving them for a little while and flipping them. So there's a whole nother world of that. But for your average family, the smartest thing to do is to just buy a car that just came off lease that has 30 to 40,000 miles on it, safe, certified. You drive that thing for 6 to 7 years, and then you go and you do it again. You sell it, it'll still hold some kind of value. You sell it, you go buy another one. I mean, another thing that's coming into play right now, and this is the only reason that I would bless a lease these days, is just that technology is changing so much. 3 years from now, who the hell knows? Are we still going to have, cars running on gasoline, or is everything going EV? What is it all going to look like? There was talk not that long ago that people wouldn't own cars anymore, that we would have cars that are just like Uber, that are basically just running around through an app where you could just go ahead, hit a button and have a car pull up to your front door, a driverless car that pulls up, drives you to the train station or whatever, and then goes and picks somebody else up, and nobody's owning cars anymore. I don't see that happening anytime in the near future. But it would be pretty cool if it did,
When that happens, I think I'm just going to move to an island. I'm just going to, I'm not even worried about a car anymore. I'm done with those days with, once the metaverse comes and all that stuff, I'm out.
Yeah. No, I hear you. But it's a cool idea if you think about it. If we didn't have to own cars, basically paid a monthly subscription. And anytime you needed a ride somewhere, you hit a button and on your app and a car pulls up in front of your house with no driver, and then it takes you wherever you want to go. It seems pretty cool in theory, but I don't know how close we are to making that stuff happen.
Well, that's cool to hear that. So another kind of question that even I have, a lot of people are saying is, what are families missing out on when they do have a car payment? Do you feel like they're missing out on investment opportunities? So what is the kind of the catch here if you do have a car payment? What are you missing out on?
I just feel like people who have very big car payments, unless you're making a lot of money and it just doesn't affect you, but most people that are making a lot of money, they might buy cash for a car, right? They might not have a car payment either. But I feel like people who have those big car payments and they just kind of incorporate it as part of their lives, those are the people who are living paycheck to paycheck. So those are the people who have a very hard time maxing out 401k plans, maxing out IRAs, saving for retirement. They're in the hamster wheel. They're just caught in that hamster wheel, and they feel like there's no way out because there's nowhere to cut on a monthly basis because they have all these big payments. They have a big mortgage payment, 2 big car payments. Their cell phone plans are $300 a month. They have all these high payments that they're just kind of stuck in. And unless their income really goes up dramatically, which is probably not, they're probably getting 3 to 4% raises every year. You're just kind of stuck in that hamster wheel. So maybe you're saving some to retirement. You're saving some in 529 plans. So you'll get to your destination. It's just a stressful, long road. And, you might be unhappy in your job and you feel kind of stuck, and you know that you can't retire until your mid to late 60s. And that's the kind of life where you're kind of forced into, right? Those decisions have a direct result on that, where if you take the opposite approach and maybe you cut out these big payments and you live well below your means and you plow that money away, maybe early retirement is an option, or maybe, just living a little bit more stress-free. Or if you're miserable in your job, you could, pull the plug and say, I'm going to start my own business, or I'm going to go take a job that's less stressful, that maybe pays less because I don't have a lot of debt. I don't have that big monthly burden that's keeping me, wrapped up in this hamster wheel.
Yeah, you're definitely, you're losing out on a lot of investment opportunities. You're losing out on peace of mind. There's just a lot of things that a car payment, it's like, it like sucks your blood out a little bit, in the sense of where like you don't even realize it, but it's like a leech, and it just slowly sucks its blood, and you don't even it's just like a small like leak in a boat, and you don't notice the leak, and then all of a sudden you're underwater. So you have to just just worry about what you're doing, and that $300 to $600 that you're doing every month, it adds up, and it adds up especially early in your life, because that money, that $300 to $600 every month, invest it, is going to, your 50 to 60 to 70-year-old self would really be wishing you didn't have the car payment back then. I'm already wishing that I didn't have the car payment when I was 16 years old. That was just something, I didn't need it in my life. But I was immature. I went with what was flashy, and here I am today, trying to tell somebody who's 16 to 30 years old not to do this. So just be careful. on, what you're missing out. Every time you spend a dollar, you're foregoing an opportunity for something else. And the same thing goes with the car payment. So just be mindful of that, and just know that, if a car doesn't really mean much for you, you could just get something that's going to just get you to where you need to go. So just be very careful of that.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, $500 a month car payment, that's $6,000 a year. That's maxing out a Roth IRA, right? If you max out a Roth IRA for the next 20 years, you could have, 6 figures in tax-free income coming to you in retirement. And that's really just the opportunity cost where.
Because now you're pissing me off. You're pissing my 16-year-old self off, because I haven't maxed out my Roth IRA yet. I've been focused on paying off debt. This is gonna be my first year I'm gonna max out my Roth IRA. I'm sad to say I'm 39 years old, right? It's not good. I have a hole in my game. I should have been doing that. I shouldn't have had a car payment that was probably $300 to $400. I got comfortable with it. I thought that, just because I could pay it meant that I should pay it. So I should have did that. So if you are in the opportunity and you're deciding whether to take on a car payment, listen to what Rich just said. That is very valuable. I mean, that is a big difference in your life when you're older. It's a big difference for your generational wealth. What Rich just said is, so if you can make that decision, you don't even have to make more money. You just have to make a decision to not take that car payment, right? Drive a beater. And you could drive a crappy car now. It doesn't mean you're going to drive a crappy car later. So that's going to allow you to get a nicer car in the long run. You set a goal. It's okay to, be dissatisfied with something now, because you got to know where you're going. So it's very valuable. What Rich said about the Roth IRA is that's if you were to flip your decision for a car payment with a Roth IRA, that's a big difference for your whole family. So try to think of that mindset. Talk to your spouse about that, because that's just a big decision to make, and really you're going to thank yourself in the long run for sure.
Yeah, and one strategy that me and my wife always took was that, again, we're not car people, right? So we didn't have to have the newest and best car all the time, but like you, we do like new cars. Who doesn't like the new car smell and getting into a new car? Absolutely. But what we would do is we would always have one. I don't even want to use the word beater, because it wasn't that bad, but we would have one car that basically I would drive around all the time, but that we would use a majority of the time that was paid off and that we just didn't really care about, and it just wasn't a nice car, and then we would have one that we had to make sure that it was safe and secure for our kids, and for all of that, where it was a little bit nicer, a little bit more expensive kind of car. So we kind of split it 1 and 1, and I always made sure that I never had 2 car payments. So if I couldn't have one that was completely paid off, then there was no way that I was going to be, carrying two car payments on there. So a little bit of sacrifice, but not crazy. It's a strategy that's doable. It's realistic for families out there. Because maybe if you have 2 or 3 kids, you just don't have a choice. It's like you don't have the money saved. You have to have a car payment. There's no way around it. So what you do is, you focus on getting one of them paid off, and then having the other one with the car payment, and driving the one that's paid off as long as you possibly can. Use the other one to transport your family around to feel safe and secure, and hopefully you could get them both paid off, and then you're in a position of strength, moving forward. But it also creeps in, like we just recently had both cars paid off, and it creeps in where it's like, I'd like to have a new car. It's like this car is starting to get old, and you start seeing the technology and everything. And my 2013 Honda Pilot, all of a sudden it's looking like, it's so old and dirty and beat up. It's like we could get into a new car, and that just creeps into your head. And we did pull the trigger on it. I kind of caved on that one, but we did put down a pretty significant amount on it. And then the financing makes it attractive also, where you could get 1% interest, 2% interest. The rates have gone up a little bit since we did that. Another thing, which is a whole another angle, is if you're self-employed. So me and my wife are self-employed. So the reason why I did it in December was because I was able to take a tax deduction on the purchase of the vehicle. So once I did all the math and went through all the numbers, it actually, it took a significant amount off of the sticker price of the car, because I was able to do what's called bonus depreciation, because it was an SUV. So I was able to, write off the whole amount in 1 year, and it saved me a ton of taxes in 2021. But not everybody falls into that camp. But I just thought I would throw that out there. If you are self-employed, there could be some strategies around saving some money on taxes, getting a deduction, for using your car. It has to be obviously for business purposes. But yeah, as a family, I just love the idea of having one beater that's paid off and then having one that you transport your family around, and trying to keep just the overall cost of owning a car as low as humanly possible, because it just doesn't benefit you in any other way, right? It's a depreciating asset. You're not growing your wealth by owning cars and riding around in a sweet car. It might look cool, you might make you feel good, but it's not building your net worth. It's not growing your wealth.
Yep, fully agree. Another kind of topic based on this is, so the families that are living paycheck to paycheck, they still got to drive. So what could these families that are tight on their budget, what can they do to avoid the cost or just reduce the cost in their kind of lifespan when it comes to buying or leasing a car?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, it's like we kind of said, yeah, I think you got to go down the road of just buying a used car that's going to be good enough, that's going to be safe, where, and if you could finance it. So if you could buy a car, say you're really, really living paycheck to paycheck and you are on the tight budget, buying an older car that's certified where you could spread the payments out, even if you have to spread them out for 72 months and pay it off over time, and then just try to throw any cash at it, do like the debt snowball type of thing where you get your payment low just so you're not committed to that higher payment, but you do everything you can in your power to get rid of that payment as quickly as humanly possible so you could eliminate it from your life. But it's like you have to keep, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, then the most important thing is being able to survive and keeping the monthly payments low, right? Where if you lease a car, again, the payment is still going to be pretty juicy and it's never going away. Where if you buy a used car, maybe you could have a payment that's going to be in the same ballpark as leasing a car, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel where once you're done paying that car off, now you have no car payment, and now you could start snowballing that into other debt that you might have. But it comes back down to, the order of operations, right? If you have credit card debt, then it's like, how do you take on another payment? You can't. If you're paying interest on credit cards, that's like public enemy number one. You got to figure out a way that you could attack that stuff, and tacking on the $500 car payment, that's not going to help anything, right? So you got to figure out a way that you could get through with, having that car payment as low as possible so you could attack the credit card debt, and then just kind of go through the pecking order, go through the snowball of eliminating the highest interest rate first. And, maybe those car loans will end up being last on that pecking order because maybe you could finance it at 2 or 3% or 4% or whatever. But eventually getting to the end of that where all you have left is your mortgage, that would be a happy place to be. But it's hard because, especially if you live in an area like me, you live in the suburbs and you need to commute to work and you need to drive your kids to sports and school and everything. It's not like you could go without a car. So you need a car. You just need to be strategic about it and try to do it in the least expensive way possible. And if you're carrying credit card debt, then you're in an emergency situation where it's like, you got to put out the fire. And all leasing a car does is it adds fuel to the fire. It's not going to put it out. So you have to figure out a way to not do that, and have a lower payment so you could put out the fire that you're dealing with.
Yeah, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, one thing is you're not getting a new car. You need to learn the word no. You need to say it to you need to say it to your spouse, say it to the kids, say it to the Joneses. You're not getting a new car. You need something, in the mid-level to a beater, right? And then you need to attack that, try to pay that off. If you have to take on payments, I highly suggest you don't if you're paycheck to paycheck. It's just not good. But if you do have to take on like low payments, like Richard was saying, try to attack that, in the snowball way. Try to even pick up extra work to kind of, get rid of that payment. Any extra money, just throw it at that. Just try to get that done, right? So you can kind of get that breath that you need and focus on other things for your family. So you definitely want to avoid, anything new. It's just, a $500 payment when, you're barely paying your mortgage. It's just not going to look good on your budget. So just try to avoid that. Try to keep it very low, be very minimalistic. So that's just, one thing to do. One thing I've researched is that in the lifespan, the average person buys about 9 to 10 cars in their lifespan. So they drive about 55 to 60 years based on how long they live. And, sometimes when you're older, you don't drive as much. About that. So times 2, right? So I said 9 to 10 cars. So that's almost 20 cars with you and your spouse, right? That's a lot of cars your family is buying, plus your kids, right? As they get, turn 16. So that's 20 cars. That's a lot of heavy decisions you got to make. So if the average person buys about that, or the average family buys about 20, So what if you could each as a person make that average of 10 per person, make that 5 in your lifespan, right? And use the car for about 11 years, maybe even longer, right? Try to reduce that. And just try to reduce the amount of cars in that lifespan. And that could drastically allow you to invest more over your lifespan. That can make a big difference. If you just sit on a car for 3 to 5 more years, and just, big deal, it's playing CDs, or it doesn't have this technology. If you're like person like me, like Rich has invested younger, I haven't. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have the car a little bit longer so I can kind of catch up in my retirement, right? So I have to focus on that. So I'm gonna be the guy that's gonna have 3 to 5 cars. I don't care, because I know other things matter more than me. I want to be able to just live off the interest in my 401k when I get older. But I have to make up for that. So I'm going to be the guy that's going to have the car that's going to be 15 years old, because there's other goals that I have to focus on. Rich can kind of get the newer car. He made some smarter decisions when he was younger, so it's okay for that. But for a person like me, who kind of doesn't, I still have some catching up to do. I'm going to break down my lifespan of all these decisions I'm going to make, and I'm going to try to reduce the amount of times that I have to make a decision on a car, so I can make up for areas like that. So just think of that, because you definitely don't want the car to be one of your biggest assets that you have. And a lot of people, and me included at one time in my life, the car, I thought it was an asset. It is worth something. Like if you were to die, you are handing over something to somebody that has a value. But it's really not. You should not be your highest value. So try to just stay away from, that type of decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an asset, but it goes down in value. It's not the type of asset you want to be carrying for a while. It bleeds money from you. It doesn't put money in your pocket, right? Real assets, they're going to grow in value and put money in your pocket every month, where a car goes down in value and it takes money out of your pocket every month. So yeah, it's considered an asset, but it's not one that you want to be proud of or carrying around with you all the time, unless it's, unless you're driving around Ferraris and collectible cars and that's what you do. Yeah. But that's not us.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that just about wraps it up. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. So look for future episodes coming up soon. And if you like what we have, please subscribe. Please like us. Ask any questions that you have on social media, and we'd be glad to kind of include it in the next episode. Take care.
All right, man. Good to see you. Be good.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.